Thank you, Paul, and obviously to thank you, Jennifer, as well, for a wonderful and I think very thought-provoking presentation as well. So, Jennifer, we're going to try and do it some justice, reflect on some of your talking points today, and hopefully expand the conversation. We've got a really wonderful panel today. So you've heard from Paul. I'm going to try and, if you like, be the ringmaster for I hope it's going to be a lively conversation. And please, we'll watch for questions coming in as well. We'll take them towards the end. But we really do have a wonderful panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a second. So Emma, can I start with yourself, please? Emma, you're on mute. What we'll do is just go to Ben while Emma comes off of mute.
Hi, I'm Ben Warbank. I'm the BIM Strategy and Partnerships Manager for Trimble.
Thank you, Ben. Thomas?
Hello, my name is Tuomas Syrenen. I'm actually one of the co-founders of Futris, a digital consultancy that I've been also in the board of directors of FIRA, a general contractor renewing construction industry.
Thank you. Ian?
Yep, afternoon everybody. I am Data Advisory Lead at Arup.
Great stuff. And right back to yourself. Hopefully you managed to get all the... No, I think we're in there. So hopefully we're going to get Emma on in a minute with there. But we'll kick off anyway. Emma, if we'll get you back on and hear your voice soon. But just reflecting and on Jennifer's presentation, I think one of the things I took away, we're talking more and more about a built environment. We're talking more and more about a systems approach to what we're doing. And I think one of the things that came out, we are still very reliant upon traditional approaches as an industry. Do you think, in terms of solving the big problems we've got, that the needs of society are no longer serviceable, based upon these traditional methods? This you heard from Jennifer about, we're trying to address, massive things in terms of, pressure of operational resources, decarbonisation of construction, and new demand. So essentially, is the traditional ways just no longer applicable? Do we really have to exchange? So, anyone want to answer that one?
Well, I'll give it a bash. I think there are so many additional layers of compliance that the industry now needs to deal with. So if you're a housing association, you have to evidence that you are talking to your residents and that you're involving them in the processes. If you are doing Part L compliance for the building regulations, there are now huge implications if you're not recording that you are installing your details on site as you are supposed to, and you have to evidence that. We've heard today the huge responsibilities that the Safety Act is bringing into play, and goodness me, the idea of being a responsible party, it comes with very onerous responsibilities. So that's a long-winded way of saying no. I do not think that the old analog ways of doing things are going to cut the mustard with this. I think we have to move to a digital way of doing things, and I think that even though things are not yet, and we've seen many references to this, not yet as seamless and easy to do as we would like them to be, the responsibility is actually just ask you to evidence that you're doing the best that you can with these things under current, obviously, ideally we are looking 100 years into the future, but actually as we stand now, if you follow ISO 19650, if you really detail what you're trying to do, if you use a CDE to capture, there is an awful lot that we can do with existing digital process that will get us a good deal on the way. And in the meantime, firms like Trimble and so on, and all of our competitors are madly trying to solve some of these bigger issues at the same time. So, sorry, yeah, long-winded.
No, it made perfect sense, Ben. I think there was two things I took away from it. We need to move away from traditional approaches to a much more digitized approach, and I think the problems we're trying to solve are much more multidimensional in nature, much more wicked in terms of what that looks like. Uh, Ian and Thomas, is that something you'd agree or disagree with in terms of what was said so far?
I think I would add a caveat, which is it's easy to talk about digital like it's a technology question, and obviously technology has a role to play, but it feels like we've been throwing technology at the problem for 10, 20, 30 years now. And if technology was the answer, we probably would have sorted it out by now. So going back to what Jennifer said, it's really about how do we create a culture within our organizations where people feel empowered to use information, right? And frankly, I would rather work in an organization that has that culture, but only Microsoft Excel, rather than work in an organization that doesn't have that culture, but all the fancy BIM products you can name.
Sorry, Ben, back to yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to actually say I absolutely agree with what's just been said, and I would cover what I was saying by saying that I did say that if you follow ISO 19650, which is all about how you are detailing what you're being asked to procure, in terms of your AIRs, your OIR, so asset information requirements, organizational information requirements, each party's EIRs, and then responses with their BEPs. These are not actually about bits of technology at all. This is about making sure that you've detailed out what the deliverables are going to be and how you've made them contractual.
Indeed, that was a smorgasbord of acronyms there, Ben. So it sounds like we're move towards if you like the next wave is going to within there. But I completely get it. I think one of the things you mentioned there was that OIR, the organizational information requirements. And I think that's one of the big things that Jennifer said as well. I'm paraphrasing for you here, Jennifer, just watch you nodding. But I think the big thing you said was being value led. Starting very much of understanding, what are the strategic objectives and how your data strategy can respond to that is one of the key takeaways I've had. And I think, as Ben said, these organizational information requirements, and indeed the wider organizational framework, are really key in terms of what that looks like. And I think this panel is a great demonstration. If you don't get the technology right as well, it doesn't work. So hopefully everyone's coming back to us as well. We'll get Emma back in a minute. Thomas, can you hear us okay? Thomas, can you hear us?
Yes, now I can hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. I don't know if you heard the responses, from Ben and Ian in terms of this transition, about the need to move forward in terms of that next wave. Do you think that's true for what you're seeing as well? This digital dream, is it something that helps us move from a traditional way of working to something that's much more advanced?
Yeah. Yes. So I would actually also put it the other way around. Sort of like I think that if we want to take advantage of digital, what I've seen happening is that if we bring digital to only our existing sort of paradigm, which is like project paradigm and so on, we get only like marginal results. And when I've seen like really good results is when we move towards like more like industrial assembly type of construction paradigm, and then we actually sort of like can lead that with data, meaning that we have like we can divide the processes into more tasks. We actually have much better tolerances. We have much more sort of like modular approach. And then when we put data and AI into the core of that operating model, we get really good results, like reducing cycle times 30%, 40% over total time. But at least what I've seen is that we struggle to actually get results of data and AI if we didn't change the whole paradigm. So maybe I would put it also that way, that to get there, we need to change the approach.
Jennifer, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'd like to slightly respectfully disagree with Thomas, just to bring a bit of edge to the conversation. That I do agree that if we want to have a paradigm shift, we have to think differently. But I also think that just getting the basics right of information and data management will allow us to gain such huge insights from the data that we already have available to us. I mean, all the work that we were doing looking at carbon on the construction sites, one of the problems I think we have at the moment with driving carbon down as quickly as we possibly can, and I'm looking at an amazing windstorm happening outside my window, which feels to me like climate change, is that we have a lot of data already on our construction sites, but it's not well knitted together, so people can't use it. What we tend to do is count carbon by following the money at the moment, and we work out how much we spent on each kind of material, what the carbon intensity of each of those materials is, and that's the carbon for a project, job done, lovely jubbly. That all that tells us, it's a bit like walking to the doctor and the doctor telling the doctor you've got a temperature and nothing else. You know, it doesn't give them any granular information about actually what's causing the problem and how to reduce, in our case, the carbon emission, in that case, the temperature. You know, do I give you a paracetamol or do I rush you into hospital for antibiotics for sepsis? I don't know. You've got a temperature. Who knows? So we really need to make best use of what we've got around us, as well as, for those paradigm shift moments, sorting out the data revolution side of things. I think we can evolve and revolute.
Definitely. Emma, I'm going to turn the next probably question you. Welcome back on board. So one of the things that's came out, we've talked about, the need to move from, traditional ways of working, and how it can now sort of, more modern methods going to help us sort of ameliorate the wicked challenges there. I think the thing that's came through from all the panelists is there has been about data, and to make the paradigm shift work in industry. Do clients, or brackets, appointing parties, so I don't get shot down within there, do they need to treat data more as a strategic asset that's actionable and usable? I think we've created sufficient data and information literacy yet. I mean, we've got, if you like, we've got the UK BIM Framework there, we've got the framework. Are clients seeing it as a strategic asset, and do we need to do more? So a two-part question. I don't know if you want to lead with that one.
Oh no.
Emma, I still can't hear you. You're going to have to mime it. Well, Emma tries to sort that out. Ian, do you want to maybe come in with that one in terms of, a big part of your career has obviously been a very data-centric approaches and very much focused on that client side of data. Do you think that clients are seeing it as that, especially at that boardroom or C-level?
The truth is, it varies quite a lot, and it varies in large part due to the political environment that client finds themselves in, and the incentives that they're given. If an organization is incentivized by whoever's paying the bills, usually the government, to aspire to a better level of customer service, a better level of operational efficiency, then they will very quickly get to the point, I believe, where data is seen as a big part of that solution. If they're incentivized to do things quickly and cheaply, then it's less likely to result in, not impossible, but it's less likely to result in people paying for the upfront fixed cost of getting data, right, in my experience. And I've been on both sides of the fence, as I'm sure many of you have. Trying to find the right balance of incentives that gives people the reason to invest in data, which is not something that can change things overnight as much as we might pretend it is really important.
Emma, do you want to give this a go as well? Follow on for, I don't know if you are, Dina, or you.
Can you hear me now? Yes, it works. Right. Shall I go back to that question that you asked?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so definitely we should be treating information as a valuable asset just as much as the physical asset. And I don't think that idea is getting across that well at the moment. It is starting in some organisations, and I've worked with some organisations where I've actually gone in and looked at the information management setup at an organisational level. So, let's park projects for a bit, because that's actually, you need to look at information management within an organisation first, because there's no point in having the perfect project when you're not going to be able to actually use the information that you can see from it. So really, for me, information management starts within organisations, and it's really looking at that fact that, the virtual information asset can bring so much more value as much as the physical one. If you can't find information easily, which a lot of organisations you can't, then the amount of time spent just even searching for information is huge, rather than people doing their day jobs, and that always affects the bottom line. So for me, yeah, it's really looking at that.
Great stuff. Ben, Thomas, I see Thomas, you got your hand up first.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe I would put it so. I think, of course, it varies how much sort of like C-level appreciates data, and I think it also comes to the fact that I think there's still a little bit of like unawareness of what can we do, how much we can improve business results, or how much we can reduce cycle time or things like that. But said that, I think that our company should look at it. I think every company has all sorts of portfolios of products, initiatives, whatever those are. But very few companies is actually managing their information as a portfolio, so that they actually would continuously optimize the portfolio of information assets that they have. They actually think about it as an asset and invest in it, and also see how much they can get benefit out of it. And I believe this kind of information portfolios is something that we need to start actually looking into in the coming years.
Emma, come back in.
And I agree with that, even things like information requirements. So typically we look at information requirements at a project level, but actually we need to start looking across entire portfolios, because that's where the value is, because it will be the same across all your buildings or your physical assets. So yeah, I do agree with that.
So we're now talking about enterprise level. Jennifer, I'll bring you back in a minute within that one. So I mean, I see clients up in Scotland here. University estates, 600 years old. If you like, their information goes back to parchments and everything. It's a spaghetti sort of thing. So, Jennifer, do you think that's something that the technologies now using maybe machine learning can help us, if you like, to try and sort all that information at an enterprise level?
I think it could. I'm just going to briefly follow up on the previous comment about data information and needing to manage it at a sort of organizational level. I think the key, and it relates to what you're saying, Dave, that the key thing is that information gains value by being reused. And there's lots of examples we can come up with where you get a piece of information about an asset or piece of data about an asset that you can use to generate different kinds of information, even several years into the future. So I think we have a very short-term view of data at the moment, and we need to get that longer-term view. And this comes to both the challenge of integrating past data sources and also thinking about how we're going to manage our data sources going forward. So I talked about future-proofing. So we've got to kind of backcast and future-proof our data. And yes, there are lots of machine reading devices that can look at printed information and digitize them, not just turn them into a PDF, because I am insistent to people that if you've digitized a piece of paper, you've probably made life worse for yourself if you turned it into a PDF, because it just becomes less searchable and less readable and less findable. But if you do proper stuff, there are some fantastic SMEs out there who are doing this as part of another service now. They're digitalizing a paper piece of information to turn it into something that you can actually feed into a database. So there are ways that we can use these sophisticated tools to do that. To be honest, they're some of the lower value things in some ways. They're just kind of getting the basics sorted out, which we absolutely have to do, so that we can then use the data far more powerfully. But if we don't do this kind of administrative grunt of managing our data and curating our data well, we'll never get that extra value out of it. So it is really important that we do it.
Thomas, you want to come in with that one?
Yep, maybe just one. I think that there are many different angles, but I just wanted to bring one specific angle that I feel actually personally quite excited about, is that during this year we've been able to actually turn non-structured sort of textual data into structured textual data, and with the help of generative AI. And I think that's actually quite a sort of like a game changer in many topics, so that we can understand contracts better, we can understand sort of project documentation better, and we can turn that into sort of like structured, understandable, and reusable data, and sort of like automatically instead of doing it manually. Because I think most of these cases with this kind of like textual data, if it needs to be done manually, nobody does it. So I think that's actually a major change actually this year. And
actually that ties in really nice, Thomas. So one of the comments from the audience can say that Nick Nisbet's mentioned that contracts are just documents. We need to make them smart and make the information requirements active, such as building smart IDS. Do we think that's increasingly, especially moving towards smart contracts, smart building regulations? Ben, I don't know if that's something you may be able to pick up on.
Yeah, I think we're certainly starting to see that happen.
Is it something we've got to move beyond, if you like, trial projects? We're often kicking these things about in sandboxes or such like, and never really moving. Is there anything more to get the flywheel moving that we can do? Is it in terms of building smart? Do they play a key role now in doing that? I don't know what the panel thinks.
Yeah, I could pick that one up. Yeah, for me, obviously being vice chair of Buildings Awake in Ireland, I would definitely say those standards have got a critical role to play. To underpin kind of the process standards, they're the ones that help to ensure interoperability. But that's where you get into the kind of the complexities of information. And I think at the moment, what we're doing is we tend to expose quite a lot of that complexity to the industry, and really it should be hidden. And the interface to stop that is the technology. So, defining the information first, the quality, the structure of it, and then you put the technology to then absorb that complexity, and then the users just see the simplistic interfaces. But we're not doing that properly at the moment. It's all, kind of all over the place. And I think with exposing that complexity, we're putting people off. Quite rightly so. People entered this industry to design and build things, not get embroiled within data and information. So I think we've got to rethink that balance.
Yeah. There's an interesting comment came in as well, see, from Sue Butcher, that standards are great, but we need to maybe shake them up. And is it a view that they're often seen as being impenetrable and inaccessible by just everybody that kind of works in everyday industry? Is that a challenge, how we communicate it and how we give everyone access to having a voice on it?
I think I'm having a bit of an existential crisis in that respect, in the sense that, like all other information savvy people, I love structuring things and putting them in their place, and like to see that reflected in writing so that I know that other people agree with me. But I think that the tone of the conversation in the chat is right. Like that's not enough. There needs to be a move towards outcomes and empowering people and giving them agency and kind of putting guardrails around that, but not trying to dictate to people exactly what boxes need to be ticked so that you're compliant with ISO X, Y, and Z. It feels like we've kind of over legislated and under empowered, and that's why we're not seeing the change that we all want to see in the industry.
Thomas?
Maybe a comment slightly related, not exactly about standards, but maybe it is about like helping people to succeed. So several years ago, we struggled in this construction case that we created really cool data-driven of managerial control tools. And we were struggling that why don't we get actually the adoption and why don't we get the results? And then I think the answer was pretty easy. We figure out that we are not helping people to succeed on the front line. We are not helping people to succeed on the side. And when we change our mindset that, okay, our main job is to help the people on the side to actually succeed, to make their work easier, so I help them to get things done, suddenly the data started flowing and suddenly actually adoption went up. And actually at the same time, the kind of the managerial tools also improved because people started using the digital tools and the data started flowing. So I think that one of the biggest innovations, I think that there should be that we start helping people to succeed on the front lines instead of like creating control tools for the management or forcing people to follow process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm that completely, that if you want someone to do something, make sure it makes their job easier. Or at the very least that it doesn't make their job harder, and that they understand why you're asking them to do it. But the moment you do something that helps make their job easier, they'll all just run to it. If you do something that's going to make what is probably already a complicated job more complicated, people will just run screaming to the hills. And it really does make a difference. It's that putting people at the heart of the digitalization change process, I think, is really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting watching some of the comments as well, especially in Sue and Anne within there. That do people really read the manual anymore? We kind of expect them to open that app and straight away within there. But one of the things that's coming
To be readable.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. One of the things that's came clear to me, though, if we do, in terms of our digital dream, then we have to put more focus on data capabilities, especially in terms of data quality, and looking at, if you like, data through the whole, if you like, of the project lifecycle and the feedback loop. So how important is data capabilities, do we measure it enough, you think? Do we know where we need to be? Thomas?
Yep, maybe I comment slightly from the different angle. I think that the most important thing is to start using data, because what I've seen happen is that when we start using data, the quality also starts to go up, and then we start actually addressing the quality problems. And I think that what I found quite difficult quite often is that if we first try to improve the quality of the data, we will never reach the kind of the desired state, because there's no motivation to improve it. And so it again comes back to this human side of things, that okay, let's start using, and that actually intrinsically motivates people to improve the data. And I would also say the other topic is that we also need to actually help people to understand that there's so much more data than one initially thinks. Like back in the days, many years ago, one of our most valuable data source was access control gate, the physical access control gate, because we were able to forecast a successful or non-successful project just based on that data source, instead of like all sorts of ERP data. So I think there's a lot of different kind of angles to this kind of data quality and data literacy topics.
I think the other thing is rewarding people for sharing data. Because I think often people fear that if they share data, they'll get punished for the things that get, the conclusions that get drawn from it. So again, looking at, the topic I was talking about earlier around carbon on construction sites. If we talk about waste, you get one reaction. If we talk about, we're doing this to try and save carbon and understand where the carbon is so that we can do good things, then people are probably more willing to share it than if they think, I'm going to get told off for wasting too much. So it's also about how we frame the problems we're trying to solve with the data, so that people don't feel that they're at risk from sharing that data.
Emma, obviously now you've got data in your title within there. So is that something you agree with, in terms of the data capabilities and quality? Especially as the journey towards digital twinning, we'll have to put more of a focus on quality data to put into, isn't it? And the AI and machine learning.
Exactly. We need to really focus on the foundation rather than the things that sit on top and use it. For me, a good quality structured information sort of framework underpins everything from digital twins, golden thread, and then accelerates things like machine learning and AI. If they've got to learn from something, and if you're just obviously giving them rubbish, we said it time and time again, you get rubbish out. So we need to meet it halfway almost, and actually kind of get our ducks in order for then that to learn from and learn from in a way that we dictate rather than that dictate. So for me, I always worry about people saying that AI is the magic button, for it all, because it isn't. At the end of the day, it's the information foundations. And also you mentioned about lifecycle as well, and I still don't think we're really looking at the whole OPEX side of things. We're still very much in CapEx territory. And for me, when it comes to information, it really is lifecycle, CapEx and OPEX. There is no real distinction. Information doesn't really care. It all operates in the same way. So I think for me, having that focus and bringing the two together would also help.
Do we have to even go? You mentioned that TOTEX of the life cycle of there, Emma. Jennifer, one of the things that you talked about, or thought I heard anyway, was going beyond TOTEX and starting to think about service provision. We build hospitals that are going to actually perform healthcare outcomes that are going to hopefully get, schools that are going to produce educational attainment with their. Do we have to now think more and more about going on beyond TOTEX and thinking about behaviours, the outcomes, and the service that's going to do to society?
Absolutely. I was going to pick up on the whole X part of that phrase, that it's not just about what we're spending, it's about the value we're deriving from that spend. Now, I totally agree we should move from a CapEx versus OPEX to a total expenditure view, because one of the things I bang on about is we should regard maintenance spend as capital expenditure, because we are maintaining a capital asset, and if it falls down, we're going to have to spend capital to replace it. So let's not do that, hey? So kind of shifting our view on the life cycle of a capital asset, but also it's about the value that asset brings. So it's not, and it's also about the risk that an asset failure brings. So I talk about bridges a lot because they're easy to think about, but if a railway bridge were to fail, it's not just the cost of reinstating that bridge, it's the cost of all the disruption that not having that bridge in service causes. It's, God forbid, the cost and the trauma of people dying because the bridge fell on them or the train came off the bridge, or whatever else might have happened. Forgive me, railway people, I'm not suggesting your bridges fall down. I'm just using this as a simple example to get us to think. So it's not just about the cost of replacing the bridge. It's about all of the added disruption and chaos that causes, and distress and all the rest of it. So we really need to think more than just about our expenditure and the value, and convert our way to thinking about the value that we derive. If we shut down the tube network in London for a day, the cost of that is not just the lost revenue to TfL. The cost of that is London grinding to a halt. So we really have to think about it's the services that these assets provide that matter.
Yes.
And that's where we start. What's your organizational objective? If you're a healthcare person, you're talking about how do I get healthy people, well, how do I get sick people out of my hospital as healthy people as quickly as possible? If you're a transport organization, you're about moving people and goods from wherever they are to wherever they want to be. Network Rail doesn't own 28,000 bridges because it loves bridges. It owns 28,000 bridges because it has to get people and goods across gaps. They're just the physics reality of how to do that.
Thomas, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, yes, I think this is really, really good topic, and I would like to maybe expand it to another direction. So, as a part of my sort of like day job, I've been also working a lot with, for example, knowledge work and what impacts knowledge work. And I really like the research done at MIT, for example, that is showing that how people bump into each other, it physically actually impacts quite a lot of knowledge work. And it also has a lot of impact to the actual societal level. And I think that when we can use data and AI to actually build the bridge between these kind of outcomes, whether the organization like company is an innovative company or really good in executing, or the society is actually building social cohesion and equality, we can actually build these kind of bridges with data and AI to the actual sort of like construction or the buildings and what the society that we are building. And I think that this is actually a really good way of expanding the kind of the value to actually quite far in that what are we achieving with these buildings, not just the kind of the OpEx and CapEx that we just discussed. So really good direction, in my opinion, of the discussion.
And I think there's two good ones came in again from the audience. Ian Miskman's talking about carver analysis and systems that can start. And Joe Smith has talked about the work that IAM's got in terms of understanding of asset management and the value of good practice for society. So some good stuff, Ian.
I just wanted to kind of agree and build upon the point that was just made. At the risk of sounding a bit like a hippie, we're social animals. We want to share information with each other, verbally at least, and we're problem solvers. So we're all in this industry because we want to feel like we're doing something that contributes to society. At least most of us are. And yet we've created this system where that natural communicativeness and problem solving collaboration that we do as creatures has this sort of artificial twin where it's all forms and structured data, and there's such a gap between those two worlds after 50 years of computers that it feels like what we're really talking about is bridging that gap again, making data collection intuitive and meaningful and low friction, so that we can capitalize again on what makes us effective human beings.
One of the things I have to do at this point is just tell Nick and Ian to play nicely. You're just doing your chats with him there, so you'll be getting lines tonight. So just keep an eye on your periods. If we take this back though, we talked about the reality gap, and I think one of the things that, and Ben, I'm probably looking at you and within the, in terms of it sounds as if we've been in this journey now in the UK for probably decades within there, but we've had UK BIM Framework coming there. It sounds like the basics of data and information management, these pieces of the literacy jigsaw, are already in existence. So how do we actually, the big focus I think to some extent should be in terms of driving adoption. You think that's the case? How do we better do it?
So look, I'm a glass half full guy. I think it's very easy to look at where we are and think how poorly we're doing and how big the problems are and challenges are that we've got, which is true. But the way that I would look at it is, back in 2010, when I first went to one of my yearly BIM conferences at the Barbican and heard Morel talking about the UK government's construction strategy and the ambition that was contained within that. And I thought, well, there's no way that this is going to happen, and there's no way that this raft of standards of support this are going to get done. And actually, I think we are well on the way and at the risk of making myself very unpopular with people in the chat, I think the last thing that we should be doing is looking at having another go at the standards at the moment. You know, if we actually look at them, they are just talking about the way we've always procured work. You know, you go out to tender with a list of, you know, things that you want delivered, and all that we've done now is separated out all the soft deliverables into a nice bit about data and you know, what is required alongside the hard asset in a nice, easy to achieve way. And part of that is, you know, actually if you follow that, it's partly an assessment of, at tender, are these people capable of delivering that? And they're supposed to evidence that they are. So, you know, I would say, you know, one achievement to get a set of international standards in this period of time. If you follow them, we're well on the way to, you know, at least getting deliverables as we can at the moment in a decent format, if we follow them. At the moment, people aren't really. You know, so I do think, you know, that despite all the challenges, we're in a good position, and organisations like nima, why we support it and why we think it's good, you know, are a great way of helping everybody. There are little pockets of great excellence now in this country. Honestly, there are, believe it or not. But the industry as a whole is still lagging. So, you know, we can use organisations like nima, you know, to help each other to make this next step to move towards, you know, decent digital delivery.
Thanks for that, Ben. I want to actually come back to something as well. Jennifer talked about our fitness DVD collection that she's obviously got a big pile on the corner, and I think, Jennifer, it came back to, we need to make lifestyle changes, don't we? The more we move, if you like, from traditional to modern. Do you think, panel, that we're doing enough to weave change management and the lifestyle changes we actually need to realise the impact of data transformation? Do we focus enough on change management?
I'll start if no one else is going.
Go for it.
I think very few, because of the way our organizations are structured, very few of us have the opportunity to do that because we're brought in to answer data problems. Yeah, so we need more expansive projects and culture to really be able to address that.
Jennifer, are you going to do a workout video just now, or are you going to give us some expanded?
Yeah, we need to get off the sofa. No, I think we are starting to see, so a lot of bigger organisations have chief digital officers rather than you know, people who are in charge of buying computers or whatever it used to be, who are really looking at how do we manage data across that organisation. I think one of the things that we're struggling with still is sharing and collaborating around data. And that is difficult because we're in such a competitive world where we're all competing with each other one day for you know, the next project or the next asset management contract or whatever it is. But fundamentally, we've got to be able to share data well. So I think these initiatives like the things that nima and GIG are doing, and the Apollo protocol and all these things are really important to help us drive that collaborative aspect forward. We've got to collaborate on the rules and then compete on the game. And I think at the moment we're still, to some extent, competing on the rules, not the fundamentals like the ISO standards and things like that, but kind of the how we get together to share data and whose tool is best and all this kind of stuff. We need to make data sharing technology agnostic and almost project and field agnostic as well.
Can I just build upon that?
Go for it.
Yeah, so going back to that technology agnostic part, you know, when we think of digitalisation, we think of technology, and we always put technology first, focus on that, buy more technology in. That doesn't quite work, so we buy some more in, and then as an organisation, you've got 80 software systems that aren't talking to each other. You know, it's about really thinking about information first and the quality of that, and then the technology plugs in, and having that common platform across industry of information that we all plug into. Because when it comes to information, as organisations, we're all the same, you know, it kind of binds us, and having those barriers broken down is what's going to, you know, it's the only way we can do this. And going back to the puzzle pieces scenario, you know, each of us holds puzzle pieces and we have to bring them together to get this to work. we need that bigger picture. And I think that's one thing that's absolutely missing from all this, is that we have jigsaw puzzles, we have the pieces, but we don't actually have the picture on the box of how they all join up. And I think we almost need to hit the pause button, do the picture, and then we can see where the gaps are in the puzzle, and where the overlapping pieces are and which pieces don't quite fit, and work on those. But at the moment, we just keep creating more and more pieces without knowing what that overall picture looks like.
That's a really good point, Emma. We're coming towards the end of our session. So I was going to ask for a bit of a quick fire round now. And, if you keep it around about 30 seconds, we want to, shift from dream to reality. Obviously, it's a big theme in there. What's your call to action then to people on the call today? And just when you think about the call to action, it's something that Dean said as well. Is remember, 99% of the audience or our industry is SMEs within there. So think about the context of it as well in terms of what it looks like. But what's your call to action in terms of, and Jennifer, I'm going to start with yourself with her. So a short one, a quick fire round. What's your call to action that they can help people move and accelerate their data journey?
So I think I'm going to put a call out to clients to say, be really clear what data and information you want. My analogy is a car. If you just go to your supply chain and say, I want a car, and they say, well, do you want electric or diesel? Do you want, how fast 0 to 60? And you just say, I want a car, then you may well get a car, but it may well not do what you want it to do. So think about what kind of car you want when you're asking for the information standards.
Great stuff. Ian?
Next time you're faced with a decision where you get to choose between giving someone the chance to use information and stopping them from using that information because something bad might happen further down the line, just go with the former. Trust yourself and trust them.
Great stuff. Thomas?
Yes, I would say that start thinking through challenging the conventions. Because with technology, we can do things differently. And unless we change something in the process, we are not getting the results. So we need to think different. We need to challenge the convention with the help of technology. And also maybe think like, what kind of traditional constraint we can completely avoid. For example, cross-process integration of information flows and them sort of more smoothly work together. And that creates results. So challenging the convention.
Great stuff. Challenging. Ben?
I'd just ask everybody to seriously understand that investing in understanding your own business, i.e. doing those Lean Six Sigma analyses, really investing in putting together your information requirements, making sure you've got good sets of EIRs, exchange information requirements, etc. Be prepared to put a little bit of money into those analyses, because that is what everything else will be based on.
Thank you, Ben. Emma, I don't know if you want to do it in mime like you started it, but over you to conclude it.
No, I think I'll pass on that. But yeah, so I was going to just echo what Benedict just said. It really does start in organisations and investing and putting the resource into information management and breaking down the silos within the organisation. So, work across departments, and then also as an industry, we really do need to unite on this and not fight each other, because that's the only thing that's going to make this work.
Great stuff. Well, I'll conclude with my one as Chief Value Officers to say that, take that value-led approach, make sure you have an impact pathway in terms of what you're doing. So back to what Jennifer said, that line of sight, that if you like the Kennedy one, put some on the moon, have a very clear purpose of what we're doing. But I'd like to thank our panel today and indeed our audience for some great comments as well in trying to take us, if you like, from that dream to reality. Also want to thank Nima, and I think, in terms of, the next part of your journey, there's a lot of great stuff out there. So please, make sure that you use all the references with there. So at this point, Paul, I hopefully holding back to yourself.